Hey everybody, this is Mark here from the Geek Church, and as I've said, I've got a big announcement to make. I'm kind of doing this as sort of a, we're gonna just like do a live broadcast here on TikTok, and I'm also gonna go on the Geek Church YouTube. I'm just recording this. I got 2 cameras set up. There's a lot I really want to talk about. I'm gonna be reading from a script today, and there's gonna be a lot that I do have to say. So, if you've seen me, then you know that I created thegeekchurch.com. I do videos on YouTube as well as TikTok. If you're joining in, I really appreciate it. I can see a lot of people are, and I thank you for that. I thank you for the likes. Unfortunately, I'm not going to really take any time to answer any questions, but I appreciate you chiming them in and stuff like that. I'll put this on YouTube later, like I said before. I'd love to go live together with someone, but yeah, and unfortunately I'm not really going to answer these questions. You've probably seen my product reviews of tech stuff. I'm up to about 500 subscribers on YouTube and about 20,000 followers on TikTok, and I've almost kind of peaked there on TikTok, and I'm not really doing this for views. I'm doing this so people will know about me and some of the things that I've done. And hopefully you like the t-shirt. Okay, so, or you might know me because we've met, maybe personally or professionally. I've worked with a lot of companies to get tech. I know a lot of people, and I'm still friends with a lot of people on Facebook, and chances are this might be a bit of a bombshell. So, I need to just do this just so I can admit this. I need to tell you, I'm doing this video because I need to tell you something about myself. I am on the autism spectrum. Some of you did not know that, and I've only told like a few people. And I wish that was something that I was diagnosed with as a child. Perhaps there could have been special programs for me. I've had a reason to believe that I might have, I think when I was a child it was suspected that I was on the autism spectrum, or there was something up. But at the time, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, we did not know much about the autism spectrum as we do now. April is Autism Awareness Month, and I feel like it's a good thing for me to, come out. I hesitate to use that term because I know what that implies, but I feel like I just need to admit it for the sake of just everyone who knows, and just, yeah. Anyway. So I've really been wondering how my life would have been different if, say, I would have been diagnosed with autism as a child. I believe it would have been. I think I have a limitation. My life has been rather limited because I didn't know about this, and I was essentially trying to fit in. But maybe. I don't know. I could have gone either way. I could have not admitted this and just simply gone on and lived my life, but I feel a need to talk about it because there are several things that I am going to do as a result of this. And because I am 51 years old, I know I might not look it. A lot of people tell me I don't look this age, but I just found out that I was on the autism spectrum like a few weeks ago. So it's not like I've been on the autism spectrum all my life and I've just been kind of hiding it or something. No, I found out about this like it was finalized. But about a year ago, I suspected that my mental health was off. There were just certain things I just noticed that I just was not able to do as a person. I don't really know how to explain that any other way. I'm going to give it my best shot. But it took a year before I could even be tested. And yes, that is an issue, and I'll get to that a lot later. I'd like to talk about what it is like growing up on the autism spectrum, but not knowing it. How do I describe it? I'm going to start by saying it's like being in a gear that's sort of spinning with the rest of them, but not being able to quite mesh with the others. I don't really know how to describe it other than that. It means that you are not able to fit in with the others because you can't. You have trouble doing it. You can't really get social cues is the issue, and you just kind of imitate things just to sort of get along. I'm going to go more into detail on that. Now, this is like pretty much any mechanical problem. it's like a problem that's not obvious by looking at it, but rather the fact the problem keeps occurring and not knowing why. If you fix cars, if you fix pretty much anything, you know that certain things arise sometimes and you're not really sure why, and sometimes you can't even find out what is the issue. But trust me, there is an issue, but you might not be able to discern what it is, and that's of course the scary part. But essentially, just being in a conversation in a group setting is very difficult for me, as by the time that I come up with something to add to the conversation, usually the conversation has moved on, and that's been kind of bothersome for me. It's caused me not to fit in very well, where I've just in pretty much almost any situation. But anyway, so that's just one example of how being on the autism spectrum has affected me, or at least some of the symptoms that I've known that it has affected me. It's something that has been troubling me all my life that I finally have an explanation for. So, and hey, when you grow up in, like, say, grade school, middle school, high school, it's all about fitting into social groups. If you can't fit in, it becomes very difficult to have a normal day. And that's kind of what it was very difficult for me as a kid. The fact that you can't play sports also was difficult for me, because I was essentially uncoordinated. I don't know if that has anything to do with the autism spectrum, or maybe, but I definitely think that contributes as far as like not being able to play as a team, not being able to think like a team thinks a lot of times, because oftentimes as I believe someone on the autism spectrum, I tend to think what I can do rather than how the team works and how that kind of works together. I realize I'm not being very specific on this, and I'm having trouble even phrasing some of these things, because honestly, I'm new to this, and I don't even know what the experts say on this. I don't really want to assume that I know what they say. All I can really tell you about is my particular experiences, and I'm going to do that. So basically, if you can't play as a team and you don't really fit in, the end result is just a lot of frustration, because you have to live in a world where you just aren't really a part of it. Like, there is some normal, but you're just not it, and I felt this kind of all my life. And sometimes it builds up into an anger, and I've been told I've got an anger problem because of it, and honestly, I do. I don't really know how to explain this. But I'm not going to say, I'm not going to use this as sort of, some of you may know me and I know and have seen me angry, and yeah, you've seen that. Some of you might go like, whoa, you can get angry? Yeah, I can be. But I'm not going to use being on the autism spectrum to excuse such behavior. Bad behavior is bad behavior. The issue is it's oftentimes emotions don't really process right. Things, I don't really know how to take things. So a lot of times it leads to just emotional breakdown. And I've often kind of detached my emotions from myself just to kind of like get along. And it doesn't really work very well. Now, I found a way to dam up my tears over the years, and that's never really a good thing. Those dams will give way eventually. And if sadness isn't the problem, it was definitely anger, because there's this frustration of just trying to do something, of trying to fit in, but you just can't. It is just agonizingly painful sometimes. It's something that if you are on the spectrum, maybe you can relate with, but if you can't, I understand. I hope some of you will never understand, because you won't have to experience it. Anyway, so, and oftentimes when things got too rough, I'd often lash out verbally and just, as a kid, sometimes physically. And, but I really wasn't the one who was getting in a lot of fights a lot. However, I think I had this reputation that I was an odd one, a weird one. And kids don't welcome weird unless it's on their own terms, I've discovered. So I got bullied, and I got bullied hard. There were a few times I'd show up to a class just to have a bully tease me in front of all the rest of the class, and no one stood up for me, because I think they believed that I had some sort of anger problem, so that I deserved it. And so, I can think of a few times in my life where this bullying would happen on a daily basis. That is, I would go to a certain class, and if the bully was there, I would just get it. just be a daily beating or daily teasing, a lot of emotional damage. So, basically, most of the time I just tried to blend in the background. I didn't really want to sort of do anything because I knew if any attention toward me could be negative, it would turn very quickly to perhaps bullying. And so I just kind of tried to fade in. Well, there's no way anything like that could last forever. Now the problem is, and this has very little to do with being on the autism spectrum, is I want to do great things. Now, you can call that prideful if you like, and please do. I'm not about to deny that I have at least some small sense of self-importance. The fact I'm making this video, I think, here proves this. Part of it is that I want to be recognized for being special for good reason, not because I'm uncoordinated or slow to understand social situations. Other signs of being on the autism spectrum I don't want to be known for. But the problem is, this is a part of me. This is who I am. And I think I should accept it as far as who I am. And maybe work around it, but at the same time know that, hey, this is me. And that's not bad. That was just how I am. And but if it affects somebody negatively, oh yeah, shoot. I'm all over not being that. But, so I have a desire to be something special that could stem from a desire to want to be liked. I'm just going to admit that right there. I'm not going to get used to the fact that I'm on the autism spectrum and excuse behavior that is toxic. Because, honestly, I have had a lot of toxic things that are done to me as a result of behavior. Do not understand what it's like to be on the autism spectrum. That is, every bully that got to me. There are other jobs that I've lost or had to quit because I could not work within certain situations. But I'll get to that. Which, by the way, is something I don't really even know everything about, even though this autism, what do I call it, condition? I still don't know the right terms. I'm going to just say that right there. I'm still reading up on it, still discovering things, and I'll be very honest with you. There are books I have at home about autism that I'm putting off reading simply because a lot of the stuff I've been wanting to just avoid. I'm going to be very honest with you. So, but growing up, I'd have to say that I spent a lot of time just being deliberately alone. Let's see. I remember reading some old Charlie Brown strips, and sometimes Charlie Brown would say to himself that sometimes he just wanted to be alone. I don't know. I'm not saying that Charlie Brown was on the autism schedule, or autism spectrum, but I would say that maybe Charles Schulz understood a few things. But when I was growing up, I would like to be deliberately alone. Sometimes I wouldn't want to play with friends, or I wouldn't want to go over to a friend's house, or I just wouldn't want to do that. So during that time, I kind of had I would work on a lot of stories. I'd often play them out in my head. Occasionally I'd write them down. I think I got good at it. It was just one thing that I seemed to do that's just better than anyone around me. Not that I really tried to prove it or anything. This gift might have been even a result of me being on the autism spectrum. I'm not really certain. Who knows? After all, I'm not really certain what makes us, if that makes sense. I mean, if we were, then we could shape us, right? Like, what makes someone interested in something like writing, yet somebody who would never pick up, would never write something, even if they had an infinity amount of time. I don't know. We don't really know these things. But, so, I mean, is it hereditary? Is it environment? I mean, who knows? I bring it up because I've attempted to try and make myself great due to my writing, but honestly it feels like I just have to work a lot just to even get into the world of professional writing, and I've never really succeeded at this. And it's just something that has really frustrated. Like, I feel like this is, once again, the gears that don't mesh. I feel like there's like some sort of form I just didn't fill out or something. I always kind of felt like that was that way when I was growing up. It's just always felt like, okay, what haven't I done here? Because it seems like I'm doing everything, but nothing seems to be working here. It feels like I have to do twice the work of an ordinary person to do half the job, and that really bugs me. I've had a hard time getting jobs places. Maybe I don't pass the interview. I think people look at this and they think like, we don't want to work with that, and I think I know why. And that's very sad. We obviously live in a very atypical world, and there's going to be a lot more cases like me. And I think that people need to get used to it and, start figuring out, okay, what can we do? Rather than, well, okay, I don't want to get too deep into that. So, like I said before, it is tiring. A daily routine for me is very tiring. And yet there's some days I cannot sleep due to worry and stress, and most of the worry is because that, hey, people are just going to go and just, hey, just get there. Man. All right, I'm seeing that somebody has a question. I'm afraid I'm not going to answer it. I think I've said that at the beginning. Sorry about that. But if you want to put in the question on the comments, feel free. Maybe I can answer that as I'm going along. Anyway, now I've changed over the years because there's just things that I've tried to do just over the years, and just behaviors that I've had to do and have had to change just to sort of fit in. One of the things that is very difficult for me is to just simply pivot. By that I mean, like, if I'm doing a project that has certain instructions and I follow the instructions, I'm kind of set in my ways to do it. Then if someone comes by and tells me to scrap that and they're going to do something else, perhaps in a different way, it's very, very difficult for me to do that. It just is. And, I don't just, my mind just kind of doesn't really do that very well. It's like, it's very linked to whatever I'm doing now, and then but essentially, yeah, I did get along though. I did have steady work over the past years, and it's kind of like, I guess, it's kind of like how people who are illiterate can still fit in a world where reading has to happen. If they are able to avoid situations where reading it has to happen, that they just kind of fake it, really. So I'm thinking that's how that works. I'm assuming that there are people out there who are colorblind that may not even know it, and but it only comes up unless color is a topic of conversation. And how would you know someone is colorblind by looking at them? And I'm assuming that they just sort of get along without not being able to see certain colors, and that's just it. They just get along. They have adapted to what they do. For me, I've learned adaptation and as well as imitation. So oftentimes, a lot of things I say are just imitations of what I think everyone's talking about, or maybe what a comedian says or something like that. And I really only step out when I have something big to offer. But anyway, so basically it's just like, yeah, I blend in because I was just sort of getting used to people not hearing my suggestions. I was just getting used to that kind of life. And who knows? I think maybe, and like I said before, I think when I was in grade school, I think I was being looked at by counselors. They didn't really know what to make of it. This was, of course, the 70s. They didn't really know about autism. I think the first time I heard about autism was probably when you did, when you saw that film Rain Man with Dustin Hoffman and Tom Cruise. Now, I'd like to think I'm nothing like Raymond Babbitt, the main character of the film, or the Dustin Hoffman character, but I notice I say honestly a lot. That's probably my definitely. Anyway, so yeah, that film did not age well, and it probably othered autism for many years. So it's kind of funny how films that try and put a subject into the light kind of set us back sometimes, because now we think about that. So I've heard that stats, 1 in 100 has autism. I mean, most of us interact with 100 people, but if I'm in your social group, guess what? I'm the guy with autism. All right. Not the way I wanted to be unique, let me tell you. Like I said before, I was suspected I was on the spectrum for years, so I was not surprised at the diagnosis. Most of my life, I've noticed certain people tend to avoid me, and I'm not talking about the bullies. I'm talking about people who kind of interact with me on a very tolerant level. Like I said before, I was got used to being not listened to, even if I had a suggestion that was relevant. In the re-examination of my life, I realized I just got used to being treated as an inferior. I just got used to it. So much so, I was surprised if things worked out. I was often surprised if things worked in my favor. And oftentimes there was this era of suspicion that if things got too good, I was expecting the bad to come. And being on the autism spectrum will affect your mental health in such a way. You will think this way if things are just not working out for you a lot. So anyway, you kind of get used to things being hard, and you also start doing this thing where you blame yourself, where you think like, oh, the problem must be me. What did I do wrong? And you always try and correct or course correct or do something else. And if you're not good at pivoting, that's extremely difficult. So I realize that a lot of you can say the same thing about your life and you're not on the spectrum, and I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of very mean comments or very insensitive comments on this that will say like, well, hey, everyone has experienced that. And yes, I have told people about this and they've said, well, everyone experiences that. And it's like, I don't know. That's kind of like, I'm glad you can say that. That if you think that everyone has experienced this, and maybe you have, that's great that you can relate. But if you think I'm being dramatic, I will have to say this. I've had my life to live. I know what it's like. I know the problems that I have faced. It's only been very recently that I've realized that there was something about me that was off. And there were times I thought it was just part of my quirky nature, which can make me fun to deal with at times. Well, that's not a bad thing. It may not be a good thing in certain social circles. There might be things where that works against me, and it has. So I'm going to be very clear on this. I'm not going to use my diagnosis to excuse negative behavior that I have done in the past. The problem is, though, I don't think I would have done that negative behavior had people approached me and, as, say, a normal person, or if people didn't treat me in a very often inferior way. I will just say that. So, and I've had to quit jobs, or in some cases was fired from jobs. Much of it was based on being on the autism spectrum. I think a lot of the things that I've had troubles with were things that employers didn't really like, and they just basically would find a reason to get rid of me. So, okay, I'm not saying that they conspired to. I'm not saying they conspired to basically, take me out or something like that. I don't want to say that, but there is just kind of something there. I've just noticed when just like things don't get along, and I've noticed that, that just sort of happens sometimes. Oh my gosh. I'm actually getting a comment here. Would you wish a happy birthday, my friend Barry McCornier? I think McCornier. I'm going to wish him a happy birthday. Happy birthday, Barry. That'll be on the YouTube video in case you want to see that again, Justin Green 13. So have yourself a good day and stuff. All right. Anyway, so oh man, I was again don't really pivot very well. So anyway. So I even forget where I was going on here. Okay, I am going to say this. I don't want to have any ill will toward any of my past employers, bullies, or anyone else who kept their distance from me because they didn't know how to handle me. As someone who's on the autism spectrum, there are a lot of things that I have a hard time taking and would prefer to simply not do them and have kept my distance from them. Also, I suspect there are people that I have known or maybe don't even know that are on the autism spectrum. Even though they can't put it into the exact words, they just know something is off. They are treated in a harsh and inferior manner. Because I think that we have this normal that doesn't really exist. And I think people that don't fit in that normal are shunned, for lack of a better term. But I think it's unconsciously shunned. So, anyway, I suspect there are also people that may have suspected I was on the autism spectrum. Maybe you've worked with me or you've known me for several years. but didn't really feel a need to come to me and confront me with that. And I think maybe it would be impolite to say that. And I think if I met somebody who I suspected was on the autism spectrum, I probably wouldn't say anything either unless they came up to me and they suggested it first. Because you don't want someone to come up to you and say like, hey, are you on the autism spectrum? Or have you ever thought you're on the autism spectrum? I mean, if someone had come up with to me and asked me that years ago, I probably would have just said, forget you, man. I mean, dude. I mean, you don't want to think of stuff like that. Anyway, so yeah. And maybe if you knew I was on the autism spectrum and you thought it'd be impolite to give me special treatment, I understand that. I appreciate that. I don't think it's right for me to ask for special treatment, even though I will admit that I do want it. I will say that. But I'm not going to demand it until I can specifically put into words. Let's just put it this way. I understand that there are things that we've been saying to each other for years that have probably done more harm than good. Like we tell somebody to calm down. Or we say, I know you have problems, but there are people that have it worse. And does that really help? I mean, by saying somebody to calm down, that usually implies, hey, you're the problem here. Now you need to change. And that's a bad thing, because chances are this person might be getting very irritated at the situation around them and needs a good listener. But if you're telling them to shut up, essentially, by telling them to calm down, that's not a good thing at all. But we keep doing this. We keep doing this is the problem. We need to just change our ways here. People like me, the atypical, we are everywhere now. And there's going to be more of us. We need to figure out how to work with this. If we can't, then essentially we're doing eugenics. We're basically saying that certain people who can't be normal will just be put over here. And history has shown that that has led to terrible things. Anyway, so, all right. Anyway, but I understand that people might come at me or whatever, or do that, or unnecessarily, subconsciously, not know how to deal with me, and I get that. I understand. Because honestly, there are people that I've worked with that I've had a hard time dealing with and stuff like that. And it might have been because I'm on the autism spectrum that I have a hard time doing it. Either way, they come off to me as not normal, but I don't want to shun them. The one thing I've very much learned very recently is oftentimes the key is to find a common ground. And if you take the time to listen, you'll often find that the other person will listen to you. Anyway, and I can understand why people might do that. I mean, people say calm down or something like that because in the heat of the moment they can't think of anything better to say, or they're trying to do something good, but maybe they just can't. That's understandable, and I appreciate the fact that they might even be trying. But and I don't want to hold people accountable for this, because we've all acted in a non-ideal way. And why should I hold people accountable to perfectionist standards when I cannot hold myself accountable to that? No one can. Anyway, so I know what it's like to constantly try and change myself for others. I would hate to ask somebody to do that for me, because it's difficult. It really is. You know, I mean, I can ask you to maybe... So if I find like I ask you to word something in a certain way, or if I ask you to just do something a bit differently, you know, hear me out. But if you don't, I mean, that's your prerogative. You're allowed to do that. You should. So I understand that people have in the past, maybe presently, are kind of, I don't know, they subconsciously shun me because even though they don't know it, I was on the autism spectrum. You don't fit in very well. You tend to just kind of do that on an unconscious level. I get it. Ignorance. It happens. Once ignorance is found, then one must also realize that it cannot continue, is the issue. So I understand that marginalized groups were treated badly in the past. But at the present time, if we know better, it cannot continue to flourish. We're seeing this today with how we've treated people of color and how those that are non-binary, and we've suddenly realized we need to change. We need to figure out why in the world we are not giving these people a chance to succeed. We are just judging them and are just kind of, pushing them off. It's just terrible. And, but here's the thing. Change is happening. It's slow. It really is. And, yeah. And if we're willing to put our old ideas down and realize that to keep some of these old ideals is just in vain if it's hurting others. And, yeah, that's what I gotta say. So people who are like me, who are not neurotypical, and honestly, I don't even know if I'm using the right term there, we need to be heard too. Since I've come out and being on the autism spectrum, there are some people that I need to talk to. And like I've said before, I've lost jobs because people have not known how to handle me. I've made a list of people I need to talk to. These are companies that have misjudged me for who I was, and if they did it to me, they might do it to someone else, or worse, still doing this to someone else. I could use this time to call out these people or groups. I don't think that would be appropriate. I think that calling out the guilty is necessary to produce positive change, but I see that it is only creating negative results to their reputation if I were to just do this now. I think that would just be a mistake. I was thinking about doing that, I've decided not to. So, but just to let you know, there are 4 organizations, at least, that I will be approaching privately. Something tells me that these companies are dealing with issues of the neurodivergent already. I have a hunch the first thing that they will tell me is that they're on the right track with dealing with things. I hope that this is what I will find when I ask them about this. If not, I feel it would be my best interest to report their attitude toward neurodivergence needs to be more progressive. I don't want to get into slander territory, but I do need to report the truth if I'm not seeing certain changes on this point. And yeah. So this is the only video that I plan to do about this subject so far. I might do more on this. I can see if I get more comments on it. Perhaps I can talk about this more. Perhaps do videos about these companies in question. In fact, I actually hope I can do a video where I follow up on these companies and find them being very progressive, and then I want to praise them. One thing I don't want to do, but I feel like this might happen, is I might approach these companies and they might just stick to their gun on this. And they might go like, well, we don't care whether you think you're on the autism spectrum or whatever. We had to do what we had to do and whatever. And something tells me I might get that. Honestly, I'm going to say this very honestly. I don't want to be the type who wants to take revenge. I will be very honest with you when I'm saying that these companies and whatever, I did want to take them to court and to sue them for this, but here's the thing. I don't think I really have a case there, and I mean, what am I going to say? And when this happened, we were in such ignorance about neurodivergence or atypical thinking. We don't know. They didn't know about this, but now they need to know. So, yeah. So I feel like there's a lot of people that need to know, and if nothing else, if I can enlighten them to a certain thing, and just get them to acknowledge the fact that, hey, they need to change in this area. If they haven't already changed, then I guess what else can I do? The one thing that I've learned in life is you cannot make anyone do anything. And if you try and do that using force, then you have become the enemy. Anyway. Okay, so here's what we're going to see here. Now, I'm going to end this in a few minutes, but if you feel that you're on the autism spectrum and you're seeing similar trends in your life like mine, then I highly recommend that you try and get tested. I say try because I had to make phone call after phone call until I could find somebody, and it took several months to even set that up. Then it cost a pretty penny for me after that to get the diagnosis. And it really shouldn't. I really feel like I'm sending that to my insurance, and hopefully they'll cover that because they really need to know. People need to know this stuff, and we need to have insurance that covers this, because we don't know until we just can't tell from an early age. I mean, now we can. We know what to look for. They didn't know what to look for back then. And honestly, I've had to spend my entire life and into my middle age before I found this out. And so look into this if you feel like you're on the spectrum. And yeah. Anyway, I think I've said all I need to say. I'm going to end the YouTube portion of this right now. This has been Mark Rollins signing off.